The class, as soon as we go into the last paragraph of the class, I will look at your queries and questions, or you can put them on Telegram later and I'll try and answer them. We'll try our level best that the audio levels don't fall, but then you never know because there's something called the Murphy's Law. Now, Murphy's Law is that we try to do the best every time, but then some things can just go wrong by chance. So, hoping that Murphy's Law doesn't operate today, we go into the second class of climate change. And as you can see, I have put in also WOG. Also, WOG is one sun, one world, one grid. It is something which has been proposed in COP26, and it is a short question for your prelims. Please just follow me through for this. So, one sun, one world, one grid was proposed by our own Prime Minister for the first time in 2018 when Prime Minister Modi had attended the summit for the International Solar Alliance. At that point of time, Modi said that, we can go back to our history, to the culture of our country, where nature was always worshipped and sun is considered to be the most important source of energy. Come COP26 2021 in Glasgow, Boris Johnson and Modi together decide that we need to propose something which will decarbonize the world. Now, decarbonization is directly related to energy emissions. After all, the whole concept of global warming has emitted from the burning of fossil fuels. And why is fossil fuel burnt? Fossil fuel is burnt for the production of energy, whether it is your cars, whether it is your aeroplanes, whether it is to move your transformers. In any form, energy is being produced. So to control carbon emissions, or what they call to decarbonize the environment and the world, they proposed a one sun, one world, one grid concept along with International Solar Alliance. And the MD of this group is Mr. Atul Mathur. And he, along with the Prime Minister and Boris Johnson, has proposed that in times to come, this program is going to produce 2,600 gigawatts. 2,600 gigawatts of energy, and that at the same time, it is going to save us 226 billion euros. You see, dollars are not important anymore. But because it's Boris Johnson, it has to be euros. So it's 226 billion euros, which is going to be saved annually. Once this one sun, one world, one grid comes into operation. So what is the concept of one sun, one world? Everywhere there is some kind of renewable energy which is being produced through solar means. Like India has a target of 100 megawatts by 2020. But right now our Prime Minister has gone overboard and said that we will be producing some 500 megawatts of solar energy by 2030. That is what he's proposed at COP26. Maybe my figures could be 2030 might be a little extended, but I think he said 2030. Anyways, we will go into COP26 report tomorrow or in my next class. Right now, we will concentrate on this. And so every country has some means of energy production through sun, through wind, and other renewable sources which form a grid. The proposal of both the prime ministers is that we will combine the grids all over the world and try and produce renewable energy sources. And over a period of time, this then will become the major energy producing unit for the world as a whole. To bring it into practice, it is going to pass through 3 phases. So in phase 1, it's going to pass through 3 phases. So in the first phase, India plus Middle East is going to tie up together. So the links, the grids of these two countries, of these two areas, not countries, because Middle East will have a number of countries. India and Middle East will combine at one platform. And at the same time, South Asia plus Southeast Asia will be combining together. This is your phase 1. In your phase 2, these are going to be interconnected to the power pools of Africa. Interconnected to the power pools of Africa. And then in phase 3, we become one sun, one world, one grid. This whole thing is being undertaken by India plus Britain plus World Bank. It's going to be partly funded by the World Bank, plus International Solar Alliance, plus Green Grid Initiatives. All right. So this is the framework under which one world, one sun is and one grid is going to function. This piece has been taken from the Times of India, 3rd November. I will also put it for you in the Telegram group. And if you want to Google and see it for yourself, so you can do that. All right. Having said that, let's go back to the previous class where I had left you with what is the concept of greenhouse. So like I told you that the sun is the chief source of energy for us. And when the sun warms the earth, the solar energy, 1/3 of it gets reflected immediately back into space. But of the 2/3 which we receive, 20% is absorbed by the gases. The rest reaches the surface of the earth. Here, when it reaches the surface of the earth, it is re-emitted back into the atmosphere. And when it is re-emitted back, it goes as infrared rays. These infrared rays are absorbed by the gases which are present in the atmosphere and leading to an increase in temperature of the atmosphere and subsequently also of the surface of the earth. So temperatures of the earth, which would be in the range of -18 degrees, convert to 15 degrees Celsius. And because of this, life is possible on earth. However, there are certain, and this concept is akin to a greenhouse, which is made of glasses, which traps the energy inside, and its glass walls do not allow the heat to escape. In a similar manner, these gases which are present in the atmosphere and are called the GHGs or the greenhouse gases act like a blanket, trapping these infrared rays, leading to an increase in temperature. Now, what has happened over a period of time? What are the greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gases are considered like your carbon dioxide, your water vapor, your chlorofluorocarbons, which are present there, although they are man-made, but they are present in the atmosphere, your methane, which is present there. Now, all these gases, other than nitrogen, other than oxygen, other than argon, because these are also gases of the atmosphere, they do not absorb any heat. They are neutral. So when we talk about the greenhouse gases, chiefly we are speaking of water vapor and carbon dioxide. Now, water vapor is present in proportion, in 2/3 proportion in the atmosphere, and its presence in the atmosphere has not increased or decreased over a period of time. However, this is not true of carbon dioxide, whose proportion has increased manyfold because of deforestation, leading to a loss in sequestration of carbon, and at the same time, burning of fossil fuels, which have added carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, resulting in an increase in greenhouse gases, trapping of more heat, and there is an enhanced greenhouse effect, which is now being termed as global warming. So we spoke about a number of gases like the chlorofluorocarbons, we spoke of methane, we spoke of carbon dioxide, and we also spoke of nitrous oxide, which are the main pollutants present in the atmosphere and which are our greenhouse gases. Now, coming from there is the whole concept of ozone and ozone depletion. Ozone and ozone depletion. The concept of ozone and ozone depletion started off in 1974. I would not like you to go through the calendar of it. Ozone, like I told you, has come 7 times in the question paper and in the environment section, and every detail of it has come so far. I'm taking you through it because it's history, it's part of the environment, you should know it. If it is coming 7, 8 times, you are bound to be asked in one form or the other. But more importantly, it is something which has happened before, not likely to happen in the future. Nobody talked of ozone in COP26. But just to give you a perspective, I'm going to repeat here that ozone is nothing but O3. It formulates in what is called the stratosphere. So when we talk of global warming, we are talking of the troposphere. Please be very clear about this. When we're talking of global warming, we are talking of the troposphere. And when we talk of ozone depletion, we are talking of the stratosphere. Now in the stratosphere, we have oxygen molecules, but they are what is called the ultraviolet rays of the sun acting on those oxygen molecules. Oxygen molecules is your O2. When they act on O2, I'll just write UV for the ultraviolet rays. When they act on O2, they break it into oxygen atoms, and then these oxygen atoms combine with the existing oxygen to form O3 or ozone. Now, ozone too is a greenhouse gas. Oxygen is not a greenhouse gas, but ozone is a greenhouse gas. This differentiation is very, very important for you to remember. Now, when ozone is there, what happens is these UV rays are protected by the ozone which is present in the stratosphere. Had it not been for the ozone, then the soil fertility would have fallen, the moisture of the soil gets drained, there is mutation in the plant cells, we can get a skin cancer called melanoma. These are some of the effects which happen if and when the UV rays strike the surface of the earth because the ozone is not able to protect it. Now, what has happened over a period of time is that human consumption of a substance called chlorofluorocarbons or hydrochlorofluorocarbons or simply hydrofluorocarbons, all three, out of which hydrofluorocarbons is the least destructive. But chlorofluorocarbons and hydrochlorofluorocarbons are what is responsible for the depletion of ozone in the stratosphere. These chlorofluorocarbons are inert. They are not at all reactive. They are not flammable. They are odorless. And they can lie for years together in the atmosphere without showing any reaction. However, because of their presence in the atmosphere for a long period of time, they do combine with some gases sometimes, especially due to greenhouse emissions, and reach the stratosphere. When they reach the stratosphere, the ozone layer which is present there, they, as a result of the UV radiation, the chlorofluorocarbons get broken down. So, in the stratosphere, when the chlorofluorocarbons or CFCs or HCFC are acted upon by the UV rays, they break down and release what is known as their chlorine atom or the chlorine molecule. It gets released from the chlorofluorocarbon. And this chlorine acts like a catalyst, breaking the ozone into O2, which is your oxygen, and resulting in depletion of ozone layer. This chlorine which is there, which acts as a catalyst here, is otherwise inactive in the form of hydrochloric acid or maybe nitrous chloride also. Nitrous chloride. I hope so far we are so good. So I told you that ozone as a layer is O3, exists only in the stratosphere, and that it is thermodynamically very unstable, meaning it breaks down easily. Ozone gets made when oxygen molecules break and recombine and become O3. Ozone gets affected by the chlorofluorocarbons and the hydrochlorofluorocarbons, which are otherwise inert, odorless, inflammable gases, which are present in the atmosphere for long periods of time. However, sometimes they combine with other gases, reach the stratosphere, and here when the UV rays act on them, they break down to release the chlorine molecule, which is combined with them. The chlorine is a very active gas. It acts like a catalyst to break down the ozone layer. And that is why we are having this concept of ozone depletion. And all such substances like the chlorofluorocarbons and the others, which we are going to take on further, are called what is known as the ozone They are called the ozone depleting substances. What are they called? They are called the ozone depleting substances. These ozone depleting substances are man-made and need to be controlled. And there's a whole lot of protocols which were made to control their production and usage, which will come at a second stage. Now we talk of something which is called the ozone hole. The ozone hole was first discovered over the Antarctica in the southern hemisphere. And the reason for that was it said that the ozone layer is stretched thin and is showing that it is less than 220 dopsons. That is the unit in which ozone is being measured. This is important. Just remember that the ozone is measured in dopsons, and then wherever it is 220 or less than 220, there you have what is known as the ozone hole. Ozone hole does not mean that there's a crater, means that there isn't an actual hole. It only means the thinning of the ozone layer. Now, why does it happen over the Antarctica? It is happening over the Antarctica because during the period from August to October, which are its winter months, there are very cold winds, which are called the polar vortex. वहां पर बहुत ठंडी हवा चलती है जिनको हम पोलर वॉर्टेक्स कहते हैं. जब ये पोलर वॉर्टेक्स बहती हैं, उस समय वहां का तापमान बहुत ज्यादा गिर जाता है. इसी के साथ साथ वहां की जो एयर है वो बहुत पतली है, तो जो एयर होती है वो या तो क्लाउड्स फॉर्म कर लेती है और या तो आइस फॉर्म कर लेती है. एंड इट स्टेज इन द सेंटर. And it is absolutely dark. There is no sun there. No sun. During this period, these chlorofluorocarbons which reach the stratosphere, and it should be known to you that while the troposphere is heating up, the stratosphere is actually cooling down. Reason being that the heat is not able to escape up anymore because of the greenhouse effects, because of these gases acting like a blanket. There is no escape of heat upwards from the troposphere, leading to great increase in temperature on the Earth's surface, but at the same time, lowering of temperature in the stratosphere and above, because though no heat is escaping from the troposphere as a result of the GHGs. Coming back to this, during the winter months here, from August to October, over the Antarctica, there are very strong winds which are called the polar vortex. The polar vortex have at their center so much of cold that the air condensens and forms clouds or ice. As a result of which, those chlorofluorocarbons which have reached the stratosphere are broken down in combination with the water which is present there in the absence of sunlight. And the chlorine is released there. As soon as the chlorine is released, either as hydrochloric acid or as bromide chlorine, it eats into the ozone molecules rapidly, resulting in depletion of ozone to the level of 220 or less, 220 dopsin or less. And this is what is called the ozone hole. So far, so good. If not, please put your queries wherever you want to write. I will re-explain it to you again. Coming from there, now moving forward from there, it was decided in 1985 in the Vienna Convention that we need to protect the ozone layer. So in the Vienna Convention, what was said was that we need to have a protocol for the protection of the ozone layer. The Vienna Convention happened in 1985. And when the Vienna Convention happened, it was not obligatory for the people, for the countries who participated in the Vienna Convention, to have any targets of control over ozone depleting substances. For this, we moved from the Vienna Convention to what is called the Montreal Protocol. And your Montreal Protocol has also come as a question in the UPSC. So you can go back and have a look at what is Montreal Protocol and what will subsequently follow from there. But for now, no, 1985 Vienna Convention and then the Montreal Protocol. And Montreal Protocol is the only protocol which has been ratified by all 198 countries of the world and came into force on what is called the 15th of September, 1987. So from Vienna, 2 years earlier, we come down to the Montreal Protocol. What is the connection between Vienna and Montreal? Other than, of course, the fact that they're talking about ozone. Nobody could be a signatory to the Montreal Protocol if they had not signed the Vienna Convention. But Vienna was a general framework of talks to control and protect the ozone layer. Whereas the Montreal Protocol is very specific. It makes a clear demarcation between the developed and the developing countries, but at the same time, it gives targets to both. Please remember this. It gives targets to both the developed as well as the developing countries to phase out what is called the ozone depleting substances. And what are these ozone depleting substances, which are called the ODS? Please remember, ozone depleting substances are your ODS, and they include all those categories of chlorofluorocarbons, hydrochlorofluorocarbons. They also include sulfur fluoride and others. We will talk about the others also, don't worry. So in the Montreal Protocol in 1987, there are 96 ozone depleting substances which have been included, and it has been proposed that we need to phase them out step by step. Now, in 1991, under Article 10, in 1991, under Article 10 of the Montreal Protocol, there was a fund which was set up. This is called the Multilateral Fund. Multilateral Fund. In the Multilateral Fund, it was said that those countries which have an annual capita consumption and production, in the Multilateral Fund, it was suggested that those countries which have an annual production and consumption of ODS, which is less than 0.3 kgs, should be given financial support. It's simple. If you are a very small and poor country where your consumption and production of oxygen, of ozone depleting substances is less than 0.3 kgs, you are coming under the ambit of the Multilateral Fund, and you will be supported for your efforts to phase out the ozone depleting substances. Now, this Multilateral Fund was supported by the United Nations Environment Program, the United Nations Development Program, the United Nations Industrial Development Program, and of course the World Bank. All right, so the Multilateral Fund under the Montreal Protocol is supported by the United Nations Environment Program, United Nations Development Program, United Nations Industrial Development Program, and the World Bank. I hope so far so good. All right. Now, it was observed that while the world was working towards clearance of chlorofluorocarbons, and hydrochlorofluorocarbons. The world was working towards these goals. And in fact, it has given differential goals to the developed and the developing countries. In that, in 2020, by 2020, the developed countries had to phase out the chlorofluorocarbons and the hydrochlorofluorocarbons. For the developing world, like India, it was increased to 2024 to 2028. These were the targets which were given to the developed and the developing people, developing countries for the ozone depleting substances. Now, CFC and HCFCs were then substituted. Then this whole concept of Montreal Protocol came into place. The world still needed refrigeration. The world still needed aerosol propellants. And for that purpose, they got into what is now called the HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons. Now, hydrofluorocarbons have what we called earlier GWP. If you remember from the last class that we had spoken of this concept of the greenhouse gases, which had a very high potential for retention or emission of heat. And we had compared the various gases in which methane and chlorofluorocarbons all were emitting more heat than even carbon dioxide. So all the HFCs are producing heat in the range of 14 to 2000. Whereas carbon dioxide we are treating as 1. In that same parameter, there are 14 to 2000 emissions of heat by every 1 ton of HFC. So whereas HFC was being looked as a substitute after phasing out of these two, it was decided that even the HFCs need to be substituted with another energy friendly and less heat generating substance. And for that also, both the developed and the developing countries have been given differential goals. In fact, we go up to 2040 to phase them out, whereas the developed world said they will reduce 80 to 85% by 2019. And where have they decided this? Where did they decide that, okay, you are phasing out chlorofluorocarbons and hydrochlorofluorocarbons, but you must understand that hydrofluorocarbons, which you are using as a substitute, is also producing a lot of heat, leading to a rise in global temperatures. This was decided in the Kigali Convention. The Kigali Convention happened in 2016. This has also come as a question for your UPSC. So you please remember this, that in the Kigali Convention on the 15th of October, it was decided to cut down the emissions of hydrofluorocarbons and reduce them by 80 to 85%, in which the developed world will do so by 2019 and the developing, which is India, will do it by 2040. So far, so good. So we've done the Montreal Protocol, we've done Kigali, we still have to do Kyoto and Paris. We are still waiting. So now to go into what has India done for India's program for ozone. India's program for ozone. आगे मैं बहुत जल्दी बोल रही हूँ तो मैं थोड़ा सा और धीमे बोल सकती हूँ, बट आज बहुत सारे आपको कॉन्सेप्ट्स कराने हैं, so we try to push it a little bit. I hope you're still with me. So in the India's program for ozone, it must be noted to you that out of the 96 ODS, India is using 9 of them. India is using 9 ODS out of the 96, which have been enumerated in the Montreal Protocol. Now you will go through it fast. It is the CFCs. So India अभी बिल्कुल laid back है और अभी भी chlorofluorocarbons use कर रही है. और कौन से chlorofluorocarbons? So it's chlorofluorocarbons 11, chlorofluorocarbons 12. I just put the number after this so that you know. 113. Okay. Then it is also using HCFCs. It's also using halons. It's also using what is called carbon tetrachloride. Carbon tetrachloride. It is using halon 1301. आपको इसलिए बताया जा रहा है ताकि जब आपको आइडेंटिफाई करने को आएगा कि भारत इसमें से किसको नहीं इस्तेमाल कर रहा, तो वो आपको पता होना चाहिए. इसलिए ये 9 नाम आपके दिमाग में कहीं स्टोर हो जाने चाहिए. फिर देयर इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड द मिथाइल क्लोरोफॉर्म. मिथाइल क्लोरोफॉर्म. एंड देयर इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड द मिथाइल ब्रोमाइड. मिथाइल bromide. So these are the substances which India is using at present. These are the 9 substances which India is using at present. So to control the ozone depleting substances in the usage, an ozone cell has been formed. An ozone cell has been formed under the Ministry of Environment, Forest, under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. All right. Now this National Ozone Unit, it is called the National Ozone Unit. It is being monitored by what is called an empowered steering committee. An empowered steering committee. This is chaired by the Secretary for Environment, Forest and Climate Change. तो कल अगर आप सेक्रेटरी बन जाएंगे तो हो सकता है आप भी ये एम्पावरिंग कमेटी के को लीड करें. So in this you have the empowered steering committee, which is then supported by 2 other committees, which is called the Technology and Finance Standing Committee. Technology and Finance Standing Committee. And there is what is called the Standing Committee. Monitoring Committee. This is also a standing committee, which is helping this empowered steering committee to achieve its aim. All right. So this is the ozone situation in India. This is the setup for the ozone situation in India. All right. So now shall we go into what is the UNF? So far, the ozone part is over. Now, what is left for you, what I have skipped today, is what are the effects of climate change. So the effects of climate change and how do we control climate change, those 2 parts along with COP26 will be your next class, and that will hopefully wrap up climate change. If there are any other questions, you will be asking me, of course. But all those will include what are the effects of climate change, will include that ocean acidification, loss of land, and eutrophication, and all the programs which are there to control climate change. That will be a part of your other class. For now, we shift back to UNFCCC. And when we say UNFCCC, what is the UNFCCC? So at the United Nations Environment Summit, which happened in Rio de Janeiro, this was the international treaty. It was the international treaty which was signed by all the countries of the world and is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the sole purpose of this framework was to control the greenhouse gas emissions from anthropogenic activities and to hold them or to control them to a level which permitted the ecosystems on Earth to adapt to the change, whereas at the same time allowing for food production and economic development in a sustainable manner. The UNFCCC is being controlled by what is called the COP. The COP is nothing but the Conference of parties. This is the administrative part of the treaty. So the COP meets every year to decide how they are going to implement the UNFCCC treaty. UNFCCC is an international treaty which all the 196 countries have ratified. There are different parts of the treaty which have been signed, not signed by some country, most countries. That's a separate issue. But the Conference of Parties is the administrative part of the UNFCCC. And right now we were in the 26th, which was called the COP26. Now the important ones which we are going to talk of is, of course, the Kyoto Protocol, which happened immediately after this. We are going to talk of Paris Agreement, which is happened in 2015. We are also going to talk in parts about Doha, which is COP18. It happened in 2012. So far, so good. Now we go into what is the Kyoto Protocol. So I have made it clear, UNFCCC is a treaty whose sole aim is to control the greenhouse gas emissions by anthropogenic activities to a level which allows the ecosystems on Earth to adapt to the changes which have come into being, while at the same time allowing food production and economic development sustainably. This is being implemented through a conference of parties, which includes nothing but all the countries and their delegates who look after the work of the UNFCCC. Now we come to what is called the Kyoto Protocol. Now the Kyoto Protocol, when it happened, the Kyoto Protocol clearly demarcates. The Kyoto Protocol clearly demarcates the world into two parts: those who are responsible for the greenhouse emissions, which is the developed countries, and the economies in transition, which are called the EIT. So the Kyoto Protocol says that it is the developed countries, the economies in transition, and the European Union, which is responsible for the increased greenhouse emissions resulting in global warming on the Earth's surface, and therefore under common and differentiated responsibilities. Each has to pay for it. The Kyoto Protocol works as annexes. Kyoto works as annexes. Or it works in annexes. Annexes is nothing but a framework. So the Kyoto Protocol works in annexes. And when I say that, what I mean to say is that it has a grouping of countries from one to the other. In the Kyoto Protocol, there is an Annex 1. In the Annex 1, it is clearly stated which are the countries, and these include the developed countries, that's Annex 1, and economies in transition, which are all your East European countries who were parts of erstwhile Russia, and it includes 15 countries of the European Union. In Annex 1, second part, are your what is called the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Those are the rich countries who are supposed to provide assistance to the developing nations to mitigate and adapt. To mitigate means to control, and adapt means to be able to adjust to the climatic changes which have taken place. So what I've said to you is Annex 1. And that's how you write an annex. ANNEX. There is one annex like this. There's a second annex. Again, one. This includes the developed countries, economies in transition, and plus the European Union. This includes the OECD countries who are going to pay for the mess which they have created together. All right. So far, so good. There is an Annex B, a part of the Kyoto Protocol. The Annex B includes 37 countries which are developed or economies in transition who have been given specific reduction emission goals. They have been given specific reduction emission goals. So, in Annex 1, there are countries which have been given what is called the AAU. Now, what is the AAU? AAU is the unit of emission which is permissible. And AAU is part of the Annex 1. I hope I have sufficiently confused you now. If I haven't sufficiently confused you, then it means that I'm not a good teacher. Okay, because Kyoto Protocol is like that. It gets a little confusing, but we are going to keep it as simple as possible. So Kyoto Protocol for the first time recognized that there has to be a common but differentiated responsibility between the developed countries who were responsible for more than 70% of the carbon emissions which existed on planet Earth. Under its common and differentiated responsibilities, it worked through Annex A and stated that there's going to be an Annex 1 countries, which includes the developed countries, economies in transition, the European Union countries, which were part of Russia earlier, and the European Union. Full stop. Another part of Annex A1 includes the OECD countries, which is your Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the richest countries of the world. They are going to be paying for the climate changes which are taking place in the developing world. To mitigate means to reduce, and to adapt means to be able to adjust to the climate changes which are taking place. Annex 1 done. Now the Annex B, there is an Annex B in the Kyoto Protocol, which states that includes 37 countries. It has 37 countries which have been given specific reduction emission targets. They have to achieve those targets according to the time frame which they themselves have allotted. The Kyoto Protocol worked on the base year of 1990. It worked on the base year of 1990. So let's talk of a hypothetical country like Germany. So suppose that Germany had 20 tons of carbon emissions, because it talks in terms of metric tons of carbon emissions. So suppose it had 20 tons of carbon emissions in 1990. It took the period from 2008 to 2012. Taking this 5-year period, it said that all emissions need to be reduced. So say from 20 tons, it reduces it to 18 tons. Then this is a part of your Annex B. Okay? These 20 tons is part of Annex 1. It is your assigned unit, the AAU unit, what you have. Okay? And this Annex B will tell you that this is the amount which you are going to reduce. So you're going to say you're going to reduce it by 2 tons. So that is your part of the goal for Annex B. I hope that you all have got what I'm trying to say. If you haven't, we'll have to go through this again. So in the Kyoto Protocol, which was established with the annexes, they said that with the base year of 1990, they will try to reduce emission over a period of 5 years, taking 1990 as a base year. From 2008 to 2012, they said that overall, at an average, they will reduce by carbon emissions by 5%. This was the status of the Kyoto Protocol when it came into being. Why I'm telling you this is because when in Doha in 2012, the parties met again, they decided that they will take up this average reduction to 18%. And for the period 2013 to 2020, right? From 2013 to 2020, they would try to reduce emissions by 18%. These 37 countries in Annex B would try to do that, but to reduce emissions by 18% for this period from 13 to 20. And after having done that, after having done this, what is going to happen? They will have their NDGs, which is your National Determined Goals. So you saw that in COP26, they spoke about the National Determined Goals. When Prime Minister Modi said that we are going to go in for zero emissions by 2070, and everybody has made a mockery of India. But why? That is why I put in that video for you in the group, where he says that what a condescending attitude. You're sitting on judgment for me when everything which I possess, you've already taken from me or from us. And right now you're sitting on judgment that we are trying to control a part of the carbon space where there's hardly left because 70% of it is already being taken by you. So these national determined goals had to come now in COP26, which has happened. It should have happened in 2020, but it never happened then. So these national determined goals had to come now. This is also part of the Kyoto Protocol. These small things will come when they come in those paragraphs. When your prelim question comes, they're going to come in those paragraphs as statement. And they'll ask you if 1 is correct or 2 is correct or all the above is correct. So you should know from where what is coming. If that much you know, you will know. Like Shaurya had said that this is a test of familiarity. It is not a test of your memory. So you have to be familiar with what is happening around you. Now, I hope Annex 1 is clear. I hope Annex B is clear. And after Annex 1, and again Annex 1, this is of OECD. This is of the developed countries. We have what is called the non-annex countries. Now, what do the non-annex countries do? The non-annex countries have no goals. They have not given any target to themselves. And the other previous developed 37 countries, economies, including economies in transition and European Union, have all given their own self-determined goals. They have committed that they are going to reduce emissions by this. And they are going to emit only this much. So Annex 1 talks about how much of emission you are going to do. And Annex B talks about how much reduction you are going to do. So that is the differentiation between the two. The countries are the same. Except that in Annex 1, you also include the OECD countries, which are financing your global reductions in developing worlds. Now, and not after this, there is what is called your Annex B. And then you have the non-annex countries. These are countries which are developing. And when they are sufficiently developed, they will go into Annex 1. Once they are sufficiently developed. And which are these countries? One, of course, is us, India. But who is at number 1? The greatest pollutant, China. And China is a non-annex country. So it's having a free walk. In fact, it's having a cakewalk in this summit also and otherwise also. it is a member of the Security Council. So it doesn't allow us free access to nuclear minerals, which are required for the generation of nuclear energy. Like I said in the beginning, when we talked about one world, one sun, one grid, when we talked about that, I said that the whole game is of energy production and energy consumption. If we want to switch from fossil fuels, if we want to switch from thermal fuels, we need an alternative energy. One of the best energies is nuclear energy, but India cannot source it out because the nuclear club is being dominated by China, and China does not permit India to enter that nuclear club. It is a member of the Security Council, but look, it doesn't even have a target or goal for reduction. And it is the biggest pollutant in the world. And its consumption patterns, nobody knows. I mean, America is all in the front, says that if your consumption pattern, if your carbon footprint is four tons, then mine is 16. So America is open about it. But China never lets you in. So what does it mean? Means the Kyoto Protocol is actually doesn't mean anything, except that, yes, there are some countries which are committed, which are determined, and who are leading us in terms of reduction in greenhouse emissions. Okay, that is the talking part. That will not help you in the exam. What will help you in the exam is to know that China is a non-annexed country. So you have Annex 1, and you have Annex 1, and you have Annex B, and you have non-annexed country, and then you have the LDCs. You never know when India might drop into the LDCs also. Okay, so these are the least developing countries who are looking up to Annex 1 OECD to finance their climate mitigation and adaptation program. This is what is about called the Kyoto Protocol. Now, in Kyoto Protocol, each country has in Annex 1 what is called the assigned amount unit. Assigned amount unit. Please remember that each country in Annex 1 has an assigned amount unit. It is called the AAU. Now, AAU is a positive thing. How much can you emit? How much can you emit? आप कितनी ग्रीन हाउस गैस एमिट कर सकते हैं? So it is all measured in terms of carbon dioxide. So many tons of CO2 you can emit. That is your assigned amount unit, the AAU. Then, how much will you reduce? How much will you reduce? This is your Annex B. So how much you can emit is a part of your assigned amount unit. Please learn this by heart. There's no other way. And how much you will reduce is part of Annex B. Now, why does these two concepts become important? Because we have made this whole thing of the Kyoto Protocol into what is called the Kyoto mechanism. And now we are talking of nothing but the carbon trade. तो क्योटो मैकेनिज्म कुछ और नहीं है except it's a carbon trade. Carbon trade में क्या होता है? सिंपल सी बात आप एक समझ लीजिए. आपके पास एक assigned amount unit है कि आप मान लीजिए कि you can emit up to 5 tons. आपको रिड्यूस कितना करना है? 2 टन्स. अब ये 5 टन्स आप को एमिट, आप 5 टन एमिट कर सकते हैं. बट मान लीजिए लाइक यू सपोज यूर अ फिनलैंड, यूर अ सिटीजन ऑफ फिनलैंड, आपको द कंट्री फिनलैंड, सिटीजन की बात नहीं हो रही यहाँ पे, वी नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट कार्बन फुटप्रिंट्स, वी टॉकिंग अबाउट ग्रीन हाउस गैस एमिशन, लेट मी नॉट कंफ्यूज यू. सो अगर आप फिनलैंड है और आपके पास 5 टन कार्बन एमिशन की सुविधा है, आप एनेक्स 1 कंट्री है, तो आप 5 टन CO2 प्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं. पर आप 4-5 टन नहीं प्रोड्यूस करते, आप सिर्फ 4 टन प्रोड्यूस करते हैं, तो आपने 1 टन बचा लिया. सिमिलरली आपको यहां पे 2 टन अचीव करना था, पर आपने यहां 4 टन अचीव कर लिया. तो यहां पे आप +2 है और यहां पे भी आप +1 है. और क्योंकि ये कार्बन में ट्रेडिंग होती है, तो अब आप अपना +1 AA यूनिट का, इट्स कॉल्ड द AA यूनिट, आप अपने 1 टन AA यूनिट का और 2 टन अपने रिड्यूसिंग एमिशंस का ट्रेडिंग कर सकते हैं. और आप किसी भी देश को ये बेच सकते हैं और बेच के आपको पैसे भी मिल सकते हैं. एंड दिस इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ कार्बन ट्रेडिंग एंड इट टेक्स प्लेस थ्रू 3 forms. Now, fatafat you write like a parrot because there is no other way that you will learn it. It is called, first is called the international emissions trading. One is called the international emissions trading. अब इंटरनेशनल इमिशन ट्रेडिंग में ये होता है कि मान लीजिए कि some country is not able to meet its reduction target. Reduction target क्या हुआ? Annex B. Under Kyoto Protocol, अगर आप अपना रिडक्शन टारगेट नहीं मीट कर पा रहे हैं और किसी देश के पास एक्सेस में है लाइक फिनलैंड, तो आप फिनलैंड से ये रिडक्शन टारगेट खरीद सकते हैं. Alright, it is a simple thing, and this can happen between countries of Annex 1 only because they have the reducing targets. The Annex B countries, that is those 37 developed countries. So what will happen is that suppose Germany is not able to meet its reduction target of 5, whereas Finland has done +2. Germany will approach Finland and say, आप मुझको अपना 2 यूनिट दे दीजिए. Finland can sell those 2 units and reach its targets also. At the same time, Germany will be able to meet its targets. तो अगर आपने अपने emission को reduce नहीं कर पाए हैं, तो आप उस देश से कार्बन खरीद लीजिए जिसने कि अपना टारगेट अचीव कर लिया हो और उसके पास एक्सेस में हो. I hope I have not confused you about this. It is your reducing targets we are talking of. We are talking of Annex B. So suppose some country is not able to meet its emission reducing target. Emission reducing target, which is a part of Annex B, it can buy from the market from any country which has achieved its emission reducing goal. That is your first way of trading. So international emission trading. What is the second way that people can achieve? So suppose a country like Japan has not been able to maintain its emission reduction goal. Again, Annex B. If it's not able to meet its emission reduction goal, it can invest in a project from a non-annex country under the concept of clean development technology. So it is called clean development mechanism. Mechanism or technology, but the word they have used is mechanism. So under CDM, countries can meet their domestic reduction target by buying greenhouse reduction units from non-annex 1 countries. From non-annex 1 countries. to the Kyoto Protocol. So it can invest in a technology transfer, any project in a country like India, because we are a non-Annex 1 country. So if they want to achieve their reducing target, then Japan can invest in a project in India under the concept of clean development mechanism. यहाँ पे इंटरनेशनल एमिशन की ट्रेडिंग हो रही है, मैं अपना टारगेट अचीव नहीं कर पा रही हूं, तो मैं उसी देश से किसी दूसरे देश से जाके खरीद के ले आती हूँ वो एक यूनिट, और मेरे खरीदने से ग्रीन हाउस एमिशन कंट्रोल हो गया. इट्स अ हिलेरियस सिचुएशन, बट दैट्स हाउ इट इज. एनीवेज, so they have bought a unit from a country which has it in excess. So that is how countries like Bhutan, countries like Finland, you have all these Nordic countries like Slovenia, like Czech Republic, all these are big way into carbon trading. Okay, so one is your emissions reduction training, like I repeated, and the other one is your clean development mechanism, where a developed country which has been given a emission reducing target, not able to achieve, invests in a technology or a project from a non-annexed country and achieves its goal. Then there is a third one, which is called your joint implementation. Your joint implementation is when the Annex 1 country, so Annex 1 की आपके जो भी देश है, जो आपके डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज हैं, इकोनॉमीज इन ट्रांजिशन है, यूरोपियन यूनियन है, वो कंट्री किसी क्लीन टेक्नोलॉजी में या रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी की किसी प्रोजेक्ट में इन्वेस्ट करती है. सो दिस इज फ्रॉम Annex 1 country to Annex 1 country. तो वो पॉइंट्स अचीव करती है जिससे वो अपने रिडक्शन टारगेट तक गोल अचीव कर सकती है. तो आपको पॉइंट्स मिलते हैं, या तो आप उसको खरीदते हैं, या आप नॉन एनेक्स कंट्री की किसी प्रोजेक्ट में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, और या आप एक जॉइंट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का प्रोग्राम बनाते हैं जिसके तहत आप किसी डेवलप्ड कंट्री के साथ एक रिन्यूएबल प्रोजेक्ट में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं और उससे ग्रीन हाउस का रिडक्शन होता है. सो दीज आर द 3 ways in which carbon trading is taking place. Now, because the main greenhouse gas emission is treated as carbon dioxide, this carbon market which has developed has also many offshoots. मतलब इसमें और भी तरीके हैं जिसके द्वारा आप अपना जो गोल है emission reduction target का वो अचीव कर सकते हैं. उसके और 3 तरीके हैं जिसके बारे में आपको उल्लेख करती हूं मैं. उस उल्लेख में आपको सबसे पहले क्या बताएंगे? अ रिमूवल यूनिट. अ रिमूवल यूनिट. अ रिमूवल यूनिट में आप कोई भी एक लैंड को डेवलप करते हैं या उसके ऊपर फॉरेस्ट डेवलप करते हैं या कोई भी लैंड लेकर के उस पर किसी भी प्रकार का डेवलपमेंट करते हैं, तो आपने एक कह रहे हैं आपने एक ग्रीन हाउस गैस एमिशन के यूनिट को कम कर दिया. तो दिस इज कॉल्ड अ रिमूवल यूनिट. रिमूवल यूनिट में दे यूज लैंड यूज चेंज. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर कोई गार्बेज डंप था, आपने उसको कन्वर्ट कर दिया, फिर उसका एंड फॉरेस्ट्री या किसी को आपने फॉरेस्ट्री के अंडर ले लिया, तो है लैंड यूज चेंज एंड फॉरेस्ट्री. इसको आप कैसे लिखते हैं? LUCF. तो लैंड यूज चेंज. This is your land use, this is your land use change, and this is your forestry. It is being treated as a removal unit to achieve your goal of carbon emission reduction. This is one. There is a second part to it. The second part is a certified emission reduction. A certified emission reduction. अब सर्टिफाइड एमिशन रिडक्शन में क्या होता है? It is generated by a joint implementation project which deals with clean environmental technology. So a certified emission reduction is a joint project. It's a joint project which deals with clean technologies. और जब आप ये करते हैं तो आप अपने गोल की तरफ बढ़ते हैं. मतलब आपको एक यूनिट दिया जाता है या कुछ यूनिट्स असाइन किए जाते हैं जिसके तहत आपने अपना रिडक्शन एमिशन गोल अचीव किया. सो अ सर्टिफाइड एमिशन रिडक्शन is a joint project in a clean technology like your renewable energy. तो अगर आप सोलर पैनल्स लगाते हैं या आप विंड फार्म लगाते हैं तो इट कैन बी अ जॉइंट प्रोजेक्ट और उससे आपका आप किसी देश के संग ये काम करते हैं तो उससे आपका सर्टिफाइड एमिशन रिडक्शन हो जाता है. Then there is a third one which is called your non-market approach. A non-market approach. इसमें कोई बाइंग सेलिंग नहीं होती है. नॉन मार्केट अप्रोच में आप डायरेक्टली किसी भी देश में जाकर के अपने कार्बन यूनिट्स को शेयर कर सकते हैं, किसी प्रोजेक्ट में इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं और किसी भी प्रकार से अपने रिडक्शन टारगेट्स को अचीव करेंगे, पर कोई बाइंग सेलिंग नहीं होगी. दिस इज अ पार्ट ऑफ योर पेरिस अग्रीमेंट. दिस इज वन ऑफ द पार्ट ऑफ योर पेरिस अग्रीमेंट, where it talks about your carbon trading. Paris Agreement also talks about carbon trading, but we will be coming to that because it's in 2015. Right now, we are stuck with the Kyoto Protocol and the Kyoto mechanism. And Kyoto mechanism has happened in 1987, implemented in 2005, taken base years of 1990 for the first period 2008 to 2012. And when Doha came, we took it from 2013 to 2020. After which you had to get your national determined goals, which India says is 2070, because we do not have any alternate sources of energy. And while we phase out, we still have to survive. All right. So this is the other one is your non-market approach. अब इससे आपकी carbon market पूरी हो गई. Carbon market, let me tell you, has had a change in COP26. And when we talk of COP26, then I will tell you कि ये जो मार्केट है कार्बन की, इसको इन्होंने थोड़ा सा बदलने की कोशिश की है. Because I'm sure some people might have tried to cheat in the carbon market also. For all you know. By the way, in India, if you read the newspapers, you must have heard that the Delhi Metro has traded in carbon emissions. और उसने अपने AAU units उसके पास एक्सेस में थे और उसने कुछ $37,000 की सेलिंग करी थी इसकी. आई थिंक दिस डेटा हैड कम इन समवेयर October or November. I have that link with me. I will share it with you. So this is just for you to know that even as a non-annexed country, India is doing quite well. All right. Now going further into this so first was the Kyoto Protocol, then was the Kyoto mechanism. Now we will talk about the Kyoto monitoring system. So there is a registry system. So there is something called the registry system. Under the registry system, all the COP countries have to record their transactions. They record their transactions. And where does this happen? They record these transactions at the secretariat. और क्योटो का सेक्रेटेरिएट कहां पर है और या यूएनएफसीसी का सेक्रेटेरिएट कहां पर है? It is in Bonn, Germany. By the way, Germany is one of the biggest funders for climate change. It is also one of the biggest funders with a non-market approach. It has done a lot of investment in developing countries for adaptation to climate change. There are a lot of parties which are doing this job. So the registry office happens in the secretariat of the UNFCCC, and the secretariat for the UNFCCC is in Bonn, Germany. There is also what is known as the reporting system, where each country reports from time to time how much of carbon emission it has done and how much it has controlled. All right. Then there is what is called the adaptation part. of the Kyoto Protocol. The adaptation part is where the developed worlds are sharing technologies with the developing countries to mitigate and adapt to the effect of climate change. These are just various parts of the Kyoto Protocol. There's just good English, but you must remember that all of this is a part of Kyoto Protocol. So there is something called the Adaptation Fund. ये adaptation fund पहले कहाँ से आता था? जो आपकी क्लीन डेवलपमेंट मैकेनिज्म है, जहां पे कि आप प्रोजेक्ट लगाते थे किसी भी नॉन एनेक्स कंट्री के साथ, एज यू रिमेंबर बिफोर, उसके जो ट्रेडिंग होती थी उसके पैसे से ये अडेप्टेशन फंड बनाया गया था. अब इस अडेप्टेशन फंड में दोहा में 2012 में कहा गया कि नहीं, 2% all the countries should contribute 2% from the proceeds of share of international emission trading. मतलब not only CDM, पर कोई भी international trading अगर होगी तो उसका in carbon of course उसका 2% इस adaptation fund को दिया जाएगा, which will be used by the developing countries. With this, we end the Kyoto Protocol. We have done what is the Kyoto Protocol, what are the various parts of the Kyoto Protocol, how we are aiming in Annex 1, Annex B, non-annex countries, how are we trying to reduce emissions, what is carbon trading. There is a registry, a secretariat for UN climate change, which is in Bonn, Germany, which keeps a record of everything which is happening. There is a proposal for adaptation. There is an adaptation fund, which was happening from CDM, but now it has been replaced by CDM and says any international emission trading which is happening, 2% will be contributed to the adaptation fund. And this was decided in the Doha Convention, which is COP18. After having finished Kyoto Protocol, let us come to now what is called the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is again an international treaty which has been ratified by the biggest of bigs, और उसमें सबसे पहला and most outstanding achievement हमारा क्या था कि they said that we are going to maintain temperatures, maintain increase in surface temperatures to less than 2 degrees centigrade and try maintain it at 1.5 degrees centigrade. Of course, pre-industrial level यहाँ पे आता है 2 degrees less than the pre-industrial level, और ये कहा कि हम try to keep it at below 1.5 degrees centigrade. Whereas I think that it's been mentioned in COP26 already that we have crossed the 2 degrees centigrade mark. Anyways, we are at 1.9 degrees centigrade or something in terms of increase in temperature. So the first thing the Paris Agreement said, which all countries signed and ratified, is that we need to maintain this temperature. So we are going to try to maintain the Earth's surface temperature, not let it increase by 2 degrees centigrade by 2050 or maintain it at 1.5 degrees centigrade. Then it said that we are going to keep a 5-year cycle for controlling temperatures and greenhouse gas emissions, after which we are going to give what is called the national determined goals for each country to decide, which happened a 5-year cycle, which means in 2020. और क्योंकि 2020 में COP हुआ नहीं, इसलिए COP21 में सबको अपने national determined goal बताने हैं कि हम इतना emission reduction करेंगे और कब तक करेंगे. So it gives the freedom to each country to decide how much of emission it is going to reduce and by which time. Having done that, then they are bound by the NDCs or National Determined Contribution. Don't say goals. Please don't use the word G. Use National Determined Contribution. Contribution, which is what is your percentage of emission which you're going to reduce or you're going to maintain over a specific period of time. Don't use the word goal. I use the word goal it is the goal, but they have used contribution. So please use NDC. NDC, don't use G. National Determined Contribution. उसके बाद इन्होंने क्या कहा है कि there should be, so there is one temperature, 2 5-year cycle for national determined contribution. Then for each country, this is for each country. This is your 2 degree, less than 1.5 degree, whenever possible. Third is finance. That finance is very, very important to control climate change, to bring in adaptation to climate change. And for this, the developed nations should contribute at least $100 billion, which is yet to come. $100 billion from the developed countries to the developing countries to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Then it talks of technology. It says the best technologies should be put in place in the world framework to control climate change. Then it talks about capacity building and says that we should increase our capacities such that the whole world is able to control the greenhouse gas emissions and wherever possible reach a stage where it is producing only as much as can be absorbed. So that capacity building and the building of technology to help the world to control greenhouse gas emissions needs to be put in place at the earliest. At the same time, the developed countries should help the developing world for their capacity building. Then it talks of global stock take. It says that we should have an enhanced transparency framework. An enhanced transparency framework. Enhanced transparency framework. We should have an enhanced transparency framework for the purpose of creating what is called the global stock take. Global stock take. This global stock take needs to be established by 2024. So what the Paris Agreement is actually trying to tell you is that no matter what happens, but by 2024, you should be clear that this is what you're going to emit and for this period of time. And whether you'll be able to go for zero emissions by 2050, whether you're going for zero emissions by X date, the same should be brought out. And whatever you are doing in terms of reducing carbon emissions, in terms of technology, in terms of capacity building, has all to be taken stock of and clearly brought out by 2024. And this is called the Enhanced Transparency Framework. You need to be absolutely transparent about what you are doing and how you're going about to combat climate change. We have done the Paris Agreement also now. Now we are going to do what has India done for this. India and climate change. अब क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल और पेरिस एग्रीमेंट के बाद भारत देश ने क्या किया कि एक प्राइम मिनिस्टर की सेल बनी है. अंडर दिस we have what is called the National Action Plan. National Action Plan on climate change. This National Action Plan on climate change includes 8 schemes. They are being monitored by what is called the Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change. It is called the Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change. Please note this. Just like you have an ozone unit and you have what is called the National Ozone Cell for controlling of ozone depleting substances. Same way, for climate change, you have what is called the National Action Plan on Climate Change, which includes 8 schemes. This is being monitored by the Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change. ये तो आप लिख लीजिए. अब मैं आपको वो 8 schemes के नाम बता दे रही हूँ. The details of it I will put for you in a PDF and put it in your Telegram group. Reason I want to put it in the Telegram group is because it's going to take a lot of time for me to put in all the details and it won't be of much use to you. You are going to be reading about these national schemes from time to time in Yojana and Kurukshetra. So whatever data comes in your PDF, that will change. So please ensure that the data gets changed. You can stick with this data also. There is no harm. This data is updated up to 2020, so it won't be a problem. But suppose you get some additional information, you can always put that there. तो सबसे पहला आपकी 8 schemes में से क्या है? Very bad handwriting. Please don't write like this in your exam. You will get no marks. So what is your 8 schemes? The first is the National Mission for National Solar Mission. जो one sun, one world, one grid. That is with Boris Johnson. This is Prime Minister's own Yojana. It is called the National Solar Mission. अब National Solar Mission के तहत इन्होंने कहा कि हमने 14-15 में 100 gigawatt of power generate किया है और up to 2020 ये इनका गोल है. 100 gigawatt इनका गोल है. up to 2020 इन्होंने 36.9 gigawatt प्रोड्यूस किया है और अभी मोदी जी कह के आए हैं कि हम 500 gigawatt भी प्रोड्यूस करेंगे और उसी के साथ साथ अपने सूर्य को मिडिल ईस्ट के सूर्य के साथ मिला देंगे. ये भी Modi ji ne kaha. So you have to go by whatever the Prime Minister says because we are a democracy and because we are a parliamentary system of government. Therefore, please write only what is the official statement. So under the National Solar Mission, the country is committed to produce 100 gigawatts of energy and up to 2020, we have done 36.9 gigawatt, which is also very good. But this needs to improve. And recently in COP26, Prime Minister says we are going to do 500 gigawatts. Okay. Then we come up to the, तो आपका हो गया National Solar Mission. Okay. There are so many missions of this government. I don't know, by the time you take the exam, there might be another 100 more. We never know that. So there's another one which is called the National Mission. This we have a target of 100 and we have done 36.9 gigawatt. This is National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency. अब ये NMEE, National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency. इसमें इन्होंने क्या लिखा है? You have to perform, achieve and trade. Perform, achieve and trade. Okay? Perform, achieve and trade. इसमें इन्होंने अभी तक they have been able to control 61.34 metric tons of CO2. And it's running successfully in its 4th cycle. This is a major achievement. And students, you must go into the detail of the scheme. So read about it, because we are right now talking about climate change. We are talking about greenhouse gas emissions. So if we have been able to control 61.34 metric ton of CO2 emissions, it's a major achievement. So यहाँ क्या कहते हैं आप, under NM triple E, you perform, achieve, and trade. So not only has India controlled its emission, it has also sold the carbon points that it had. So just remember that. Because it's a non-annexed country, इसके पास कोई target नहीं है. It's a free world. So it has sold also. So this is an important thing to remember. Then there is something called the National Mission for Green India. So every time that the country fails on one front, it announces a national mission. So you must pray that the country must not fail on performing quotas or on performing statistics, so that you have less of national missions. But if it keeps on failing, by the time you're taking your exam, there will be at least 5 to 6 more missions which you must know of. And if some mission is announced just a week before your exam, the likelihood of it coming in your exam is extremely high. And this is not a joke. I'm speaking the truth. Okay. So the National Mission for Green India talks about forest cover. It talks about forest cover, and it says that आप 5 million hectare जमीन को पहले सुधारिए. कैसे सुधारिए? आप वहां पेड़ लगाइए, और 5 मिलियन हेक्टेयर को जो कि बंजर जमीन है उसके ऊपर फॉरेस्ट लगाइए. तो इन ऑल 10 मिलियन हेक्टेयर का इनका टारगेट है पर ईयर फॉर कन्वर्टिंग लैंड इनटू फॉरेस्ट, out of which 5 will be an improvement of forest cover and 5 will be new forest cover. Under this, our country is spending some 343.08 crores. It is covering about 13 states, and in 15-16, after which it has been launched, we have done some 1.42 lakh hectare. This is your statistics. Okay? तो हमें 10 मिलियन हेक्टेयर करना है हर साल में. हमने इसमें 343.08 करोड़ स्पेंड किया है, और हम इसको 13 स्टेट्स में कर रहे हैं. और इन 13 स्टेट्स में 15-16 से हमने ये स्कीम स्टार्ट की है, और तब से हमने 1.42 लाख हेक्टेयर जमीन को कवर किया है फॉरेस्ट से. We come on National Mission for Sustainable Habitat. It's good I got selected in 1995, because I doubt if I could have got selected again, because there are so many missions. Anyways, the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. I'm trying to make it light for you, because otherwise it will get so boring and you'll be so bogged down with these concepts, you'll not be able to learn it. So आप थोड़ा खुश होके पढ़ेंगे तो अच्छा रहेगा. Okay, the National Mission for Sustainable Habitat includes 3 programs. One is your Atal Mission. One is your Atal Mission Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. Okay? It also includes Swachh Bharat. And I read in this that they've written that nobody is now defecating outside. That we have covered the whole country with toilets. The coverage is 100%. I don't know, in Bombay, I still see people going out. But they are saying that under Swachh Bharat Mission, we have achieved this aim. Swachh Bharat Mission. Okay? And it includes the Smart Cities Mission. This is all coming under National Mission for Sustainable Habitat. Smart cities. By the way, smart cities is a very upcoming concept, and so is e-governance. So that e-governance and harnessing technology for sustainable development and harnessing technology for e-governance is a very, very important topic, which I think you should aim for. We have to teach you one of these days. Okay, so this is the Smart Cities Mission. तो इसके अंदर तीन चीजें आती हैं नेशनल मिशन फॉर सस्टेनेबल हैबिटेट में, एटल मिशन रिजुविनेशन एंड अर्बन ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, स्वच्छ भारत मिशन एंड स्मार्ट सिटीज मिशन. We are almost done. There is what is called the National Water Mission, which is happening in 16 selected states. And a National Institute for Hydrology has been established. Okay, इसमें एक आपकी National Institute of Hydrology है, Institute of Hydrology. ये आपकी जो नेशनल वाटर मिशन या जल शक्ति है, ये बहुत बार आपके पेपर में आया है, इस साल नहीं आएगा, ऑफ हाइड्रोलॉजी, क्योंकि पिछली बार बहुत सारा आया है. ओके, देन यू हैव व्हाट इज कॉल्ड द नेशनल मिशन फॉर सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर. नेशनल मिशन फॉर सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर. Then you have what is called the National Mission for Sustaining Himalayan Ecosystem. Himalayan Ecosystem. And under it, there is the Center of Glaciology at Wadia Institute and Himalayan Zoology. This national network program for the Himalayan cryosphere is very, very important. Please remember this point. You have one very big topic of melting glaciers and reduction in ice caps. That question has also come in UPSC at one point of time. And because of rising temperatures, melting ice caps becomes very important. So please remember this point and read about it. We'll also try to make it for you, but please read about it. Then you have what is called the National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. So I am a representative of this national mission, at least as on date. And it has 12 centers of excellence spread over 10 states. Spread over 10 states. And it has what is called the 8 global technology watch groups to implement this program. Okay, so now we are done with this. Any questions? Which is? What is that?
Polar vortex is responsible for ozone depletion.
Okay, so I've got only one question, which is polar vortex is responsible for ozone depletion. So like I said, that from the period August to October, over the Antarctica, which is in the southern hemisphere, a ozone hole appears. This is not actually a hole. It is just the thinning of the ozone layer at 220 Dobson or below 220 Dobson. Now, under this, what happens is that in the winter months, there are very strong cold polar winds which circulate in the stratosphere over the poles. These are called the polar vortex. As they swirl, इनका ये swirling movement होता है. ये जब swirl करते हैं, तो जो ये middle point है इनका, vortex क्या होता है? Vortex is your middle point where it is like a valley. So in that vortex, it is extremely cold. As a result of it, the these winds, whatever is there in the air which is above, this vortex gets so cold that it either converts into ice or it converts into ice or water, whatever you want to say. And because there is no sun, it is completely dark here. This cold, the presence of ice or cold, and even nitrogen oxide, which is present there, leads to the breakdown of these, help in the breakdown of the chlorofluorocarbons which have reached that stratosphere from the troposphere. So, like I said, the chlorofluorocarbons have a very high global warming potential, GWP, and they have quite a long lifetime also. So CFCs ऐसे ही आपके पास से emit होते हैं और जाकर एटमॉस्फेयर में पड़ जाते हैं, पर जब क्योंकि बहुत दिन तक पड़े रहते हैं तो कुछ कुछ गैस के संग कंबाइन होकर के वो स्ट्रेटोस्फीयर में भी पहुंच जाते हैं। जब वो पोल के पास, स्ट्रेटोस्फीयर तो पूरा वाइड स्प्रेड है, पर जब वो पोल के पास पहुंचते हैं तो अगस्त से लेके अक्टूबर के बीच में, जब यहाँ बहुत ज्यादा सर्दी होती है और धूप नहीं निकलती और ये पोलर वॉर्टेक्स विंड वहां चलती हैं जो बहुत ही ठंडी होती हैं, और मैंने आपको उसके साथ ये भी बताया कि स्ट्रेटोस्फीयर दिन पर दिन ठंडा होता जा रहा है और ट्रोपोस्फीयर दिन पर दिन गर्म होता जा रहा है। उसका कारण है कि ट्रोपोस्फीयर में ग्रीन हाउस गैस इमिशन है जो ब्लैंकेट की तरह एक्ट करता है और गर्मी को बिल्कुल एस्केप ही नहीं होने दे रहा है, तो स्ट्रेटोस्फीयर तक हीट पहुंच ही नहीं पा रही, इसलिए स्ट्रेटोस्फीयर ओवर अ पीरियड टाइम इज कूलिंग डाउन। Having told you that these winds are icy cold, they convert the air above either into ice or water, which acts with the existing chlorofluorocarbons and releases chlorine in the process. ये क्लोरोफ्लोरोकार्बन में से क्लोरीन का जो मॉलिक्यूल है वो ब्रेक हो जाता है, और जब ये ब्रेक हो जाता है तो इट एक्ट्स लाइक अ कैटलिस्ट। कैटलिस्ट किसमें? कैटलिस्ट की तरह ये एक्ट करके O3, यू मस्ट नो क्लोरीन इज अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग ब्लीचिंग एजेंट, तो कैटलिस्ट की तरह एक्ट करता है और O3 को ब्रेक कर देता है इनटू O और O2, और जब ये ब्रेक कर देता है तो आपकी ओजोन ब्रेक हो जाती है। दिस इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ पोलर वॉर्टेक्स। इफ यू स्टिल नीड सम मोर एक्सप्लेनेशन, contact me on the Telegram and I will write and give it to you. So I think we should call it a day now. Okay, there's one more question. Superplug is Arizona. I can't.
That's one question.
Okay, these two questions I will answer for you later. I just came back from office and did a lot of hard work because I had to do it. I had to do this class. In the next class, I'll take those two questions. Actually, I'm not able to read it right now for you, but I will get back to you on that. I hope you enjoyed the class. If it got a bit boring, well, it got very tiring for me towards the end. I felt that I was losing out on the concepts, but then environment is like that, and today's topic is a bit like that. The others are much easier topics, but climate change is climate change. And with COP26, we have to move forward. So in the next class, we are going to take COP26 report of UNEP, and we are going to do what are the effects of climate change. So we're going to take ocean acidification, and we are going to take eutrophication, and we are going to take some bit of desertification, and we will also take measures to combat climate change. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a good night with all the national missions that India has. Thank you once again.